Greetings, this is Top Hat and Buttered Popcorn. My name is John Savers. I'm your host, and today we'll consider a couple of films, beginning with Sin Nombre. This is a film I encountered by means of Netflix, and it is a film that is made in Spanish language with a subscript, but it's easy to follow, and it has a kind of a blend of quasi-documentary and kind of a romantic adventure, and I think it is pretty interesting, and also it gives you a look in terms of a documentary both at the what might be called the migrant road from Central America through Mexico to southern Texas, as well as life within a Mara. A Mara here is a gang, Mara Salvatrucha, sometimes known as MS-13. This being so, the movie begins with the star, so to speak, of one of the protagonists in this film, a young man named El Caspar. There are, in point of fact, two lines in this particular film, one involving El Caspar and another involving an Honduras family which is trying to go to America, and specifically with the rejoin the man Horatio's wife, Yesenia, in New Jersey. But he had two children by a former marriage which were still in Honduras, and he had returned. I think he'd been actually deported, but he had decided to get them and go back. These two lines will connect, and one of the stars of the second line, Sarah, one of the main figures, will become connected with El Caspar in a sort of romantic way, as well as a kind of a guide escort on the road to freedom, so to speak. So the film does open up with a shot that appears to me to be almost like autumn in the States, with colorful foliage and a kind of a meadow, and then we see the face of El Caspar. He's kind of waking up and getting himself together. This is going to be a special day. He does get himself together and includes a handgun, which he is packing. He is a member, full-fledged, of the local Mara Salvatrucha gang, and the locale here is Chiapas in Mexico, pretty close to the border with Honduras. He walks out into the town, and he's kind of slightly sullen-faced. He is a lean fellow. He's not too big. He has a kind of a swagger about him. He notes a few people along the way. They may be gang members also. He himself is a figure of some respect as well as fear, given his association. Obliquely, I will say, or parenthetically, I will say, it's interesting also that the local police don't seem to be a figure that comes into the story at all. It's kind of interesting. You can't have two jurisdictions at the same time in the same place sharing equally. One has to dominate, and you have to wonder if the gangs had not achieved a kind of hegemony locally, which was respected by the police. But at any rate, we do follow El Caspar He comes to a residence, and there's an old lady at a window, and he asks for Benito. And the woman is rather amusing. She doesn't like El Caspar at all. She doesn't like what he does. She does not want him to have anything to do with Benito. She can easily imagine what the fate of Benito will be if he hangs out with people like El Caspar. She just basically looks at him as just this side of being the devil. At any rate, it does not faze El Caspar at all. He calls out for Benito, and the lad shows up. Now, the lad looks a bit young. I had guessed his age was 12. Maybe he's 13, just about at puberty or something like this. Again, I think of this because he is about ready to become initiated into the local Mara with El Caspar as his sponsor. The initiation is a kind of a rebirth. He will also be given a new name, as was El Caspar, who apparently has the real name of Willie. Benito will gain a new family, a new name, and so forth when he becomes an initiated member. Initiation into a new society, so to speak, especially a masculine, male-dominated kind of society, generally occurs at puberty. So I'm guessing that Benito is about 13. He looks like he could be an altar boy. He's not large at all. He has a boyish, big thatch of black wavy hair, kind of an open face so that you could easily see him as an altar boy. But he's heading completely in the opposite direction. Together they keep on going, and they come to the compound of the Mara in that particular locale. It's a sort of a ramshackle gathering of rooms and sheds and whatnot. It's not really impressive. El Caspar leads the way into the compound, and Benito sticks pretty close. As they go past, they see in the compound signage on most of the walls and so forth, and several of the members, they meet such members as El Scarface and El Peliquin and El Smokey and so forth. They all kind of look, they greet El Caspar, of course, as a brother, and they kind of look curiously at Benito. He is led by El Caspar to, there's a second in command of the Mara. That is a gent named Little Mago. Little Mago is tattooed extensively on his body and also on his face. He knows why Benito's there. He kind of greets El Caspar. I think he may have sponsored El Caspar. He seems to, he claims to have a place in his heart for El Caspar. Still, he has a bone to pick also with El Caspar, because El Caspar had been sent on an assignment to a little town called La Bombilla in Mexico. It just seems that the Mara is being challenged by another gang, and though this movie does not make clear what the gang is or its affiliation, it appears to be the 18th Street Gang, an affiliate of that, which also has a group out of California. And later in the movie, higher up in Mexico, they would encounter a little part of a local group of the 18th Streeters and have a shootout. Here they're called something like Chuvalo. But anyway, the issue here is that the person who had gone or was supposed to go with El Caspar didn't recall seeing him, or he went off someplace, according to this other guy. This is a kind of like capital crime, actually. So it's something that El Caspar denied, and kind of implied that maybe the other hombre made a mistake. So although it's not settled cold, there is a good deal of suspicion. that El Caspar did not, in point of fact, do his duty at La Bombilla. The procedure in regard to Hector is scheduled. Unfortunately, between the picking up of the Benito and the stopping at the Mara compound, El Caspar also stopped in briefly to see his girlfriend, Martha Moline. He had picked a little flower and climbed in the window and kind of put it by her face. She was at first not too receptive, but then he won her over, and they had a romantic interlude. And Benito looked in the window and got an eyeful, and when El Caspar finally left, he said, "Can you find me like her sister? Does she have a sister or a cousin or something you can find?" He said, "Well, hold on, Benito. You first have to kill a Chuvalo before you worry about getting a girlfriend." But anyway, they are getting ready to go through this procedure for the initiation of Benito when Martha Moline shows up. And I'm sure that El Caspar had advised her, or commanded her never to come over to the compound. But there she was looking for him. When little Mago sees Martha, he says with a big grin at El Caspar, "Well, and now I see why you haven't been showing up." So he kind of takes her off. There's nothing really that El Caspar can do about it. And he kind of takes her off into the back, and when he's playing what he intends to do, she fights, and he throws her down, and she hits her head and dies. So little Mago kind of goes back and says, "Well, she's gone now. She's no good to anyone anymore." So let's kind of get on with the initiation. Of course, this was painful for El Caspar, but again, that's something you can't show. So in the initiation, there is what is known as a 13-count a period of being beaten. Of course, it is symmetrical with the name 13. And whether or not the Mexican Mafia required that initially to become affiliated with them, I can't say. But at any rate, it became an initiation procedure, a count of 13. You might say 13 seconds, but it's more important, appropriate to say count 13, because in the initiation, the head of the local Mara, El Sol, began the countdown, like 1, 2, and so forth. But first he had El Caspar kind of shove Benito into this ring of, shall we say, warriors, who at the beginning of the count 1 begin to hit him. And they beat on Benito constantly for the count 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. So he's knocked down, he's kicked, and so forth like that. And then finally they come to the number 13. So he's made it through, and he's kind of lifted up. His face is all bloody, his mouth is bloody. And he's told that he has been initiated, and he is now a member of the Mara. So he's all smiles and so forth, bloody mouth, but a huge smile. And this kind of catches the eye of El Sol, and he says, "Oh, hey, look at this guy's smile. We're going to call him El Smiley." So that became Benito's new name, El Smiley. Now, it just so happened that El Caspar also had to do a 13 count as punishment for the events in regard to La Bombilla. So he was kicked around and stuff like this for 13 count also. Then they were kind of led back in, and part of the procedure involved killing somebody. Making your bones, I suppose, would be what it might also be called. So El Smiley was told that he was going to get a chance to kill a Chavalo who had been captured. They had removed El Caspar's handgun privilege because of the event in the town in which he was accused of not showing up. So he doesn't have any weapon, but they gave a kind of improvised handgun, something akin to a zip gun, to Al Smiley to use to kill this Chavallo prisoner. He had a little trouble operating it, so El Casper helped him out, and together they put the bullet in this guy. They first kind of read him his rights, a sentence, I should say, and the guy kind of pled for to escape this punishment. He said, "I don't do gangs anymore. I quit all that stuff and whatnot." But little Mago says, "Once a Chavallo, always a Chavallo," or something of this kind. So they kill him. Now, little Smiley has his bones. He's a full-fledged member for sure. New family, new name, and he's very proud. And amongst his peers, the 10 to 13-year-old group within the town, he's now looked on with new respect, and so that was important to him. Little Mago also makes it known to El Caspar that they have another little expedition going out to La Bombilla, and he expects El Caspar to be along. And in this particular episode, little Smiley, El Smiley, is also coming, the littlest Mara member, and because of his new kind of probationary status, El Caspar was not given a handgun but a machete to use. The film kind of cuts around this area to the second strain of protagonists, Horatio, Orlando, and Sarah. Horatio, the father, has had a little trouble winning over his children to make the trek into the United States to New Jersey. The son is a little bit more willing to go, but Sarah doesn't really care to go, and it's taken some winning arguments, as it were, to get her to accept and go. She had stopped by a kind of a local shaman, an old woman, a seer, so to speak, and had asked about this trip, whether it was a good idea. And she had been told by this woman that Sarah would never make it to the United States with the help of an angel, but she would be helped by a devil. Well, naturally, this does not spur a lot of confidence in her, and she has misgivings, but she does, with her brother also arguing in favor, decide to go, and they hop a train in Honduras, and his first stop is La Bombilla, Chiapas, Mexico. The migrants, these people are riding on the top of the train. It's pretty much of a usual mode, apparently, and the trains don't seem to have a lot of what the U.S. hobos used to call train dicks. They didn't seem to have too much in the way of enforcers to keep them away. And near the train tracks, they were like camps of people who are migrants or at least travelers. They may not have intended to go all the way to the States. But at any rate, when they get to La Bombilla, they encounter little Mago, El Caspar, and El Smiley. Now, the ostensible mission of these three was to kind of check for the enemy Mara and make sure that they're not there, and they are, to kill them or run them off at any rate. But the other thing seems to have been just plain old robbing migrants. The event, of course, led to their crossing trails with Horatio and his family. Little Mago, they were, because of the rain and so forth like this, they would carry these kind of like canvas to kind of get under when a cloudburst occurred. And at this point in time, they're sort of hiding underneath a canvas. And little Mago came. He had a gun, and he sort of ordered them to take the canvas off. And finally, this was done, and ordered money. And they said, "We don't have any money," and so forth. And little Mago kind of ordered El Caspar to use his machete with extreme prejudice on one of them. And El Caspar raised his machete as if to do so, but instead brings it across the neck of little Mago. And I'm sure that he did so with vigor, considering what must have been inside him in regard to Martha Marlene. Now, El Smiley had nothing to do with this, but he was a witness, and he kind of ran back. El Caspar knew now that he was a wanted man, a kind of a dead man walking, as it were, that every Mara between El Salvador and the United States would be looking to kill him. So he just kind of rode along on the train with the migrants, as he would at one point say, kind of living for the day. At one point, Sarah kind of creeps forward toward him and offers him a little something to eat, volunteers her name as Sarah and asks what his name is. When he doesn't make any reply, she kind of discouraged turns back and so forth, and then he says it's Willie. So a little encouraged, she goes back to her family, and there seems to have been a pretty much of an instant attraction. I'm not quite sure why, but that seems to have occurred, at least on the part of her. There were also other migrants on the train who did not cotton to the presence of a Mara gang member on the train, and again, fear and a desire to get rid of him as a troublemaker were mingled. A couple of guys went toward him with machetes, but Sarah saw this event, kind of cried out, "Please, please," which kind of put everybody on the alert and awoke El Caspar, who had been kind of like dozing or nodding with a machete in his lap. So he's back on the alert. From this point on, it is a trek through Mexico toward the United States, and what these particular migrants saw, experienced, and the drawing closer together of Sarah and Willie. So along the way, she loses her father, Horatio. She would lose her brother also. And the members of his own Mara were in hot pursuit, led, including El Smiley, and they were determined to end him as soon as possible. The thing kind of comes to a head at the Rio Grande River. Willie has obtained for Sarah and himself, but primarily for Sarah, a passage across the Rio Grande. I guess they can't swim. It didn't seem all that terrible a swim, but this Mexican operated some kind of like large inner tube type rafts. He insisted that Sarah remove her clothes, so to speak. She kind of drops down into what is basically a bikini and heads on out first. And the viewers can see that the Mara is closing in very quickly on him. He notices them. She's about halfway across, and he starts running, and he kind of runs along the riverbank. They're chasing after him, all packing guns. and he comes to a spot that doesn't look like it's too far across. He may have a notion to try to ford the river right there, swim across. But blocking his way is El Smiley, who's holding a gun. And Willie says, El Smiley, perhaps even Benito. But at any rate, El Smiley is very grim. And he doesn't respond at all to the man he knew as El Caspar in that way. He says words which carry the meaning, tomorrow forever, homie, and then shoots him. And then by this time, all the rest of the Mara have gathered around. They all start shooting him also, which is seen by Sarah, who is upset and wants to go back, but the last words of Willie was for her to go ahead, go. So she does get to the other side, and she called the number, and someone answered, her name Eugenia. So it looked a little bit positive in regard to Sarah. Whoa, that's it, folks. A wrap. We're out of time again. This is Top Hat and Buttered Popcorn. My name is John Savers. I'm your host.